house, and we are here today to do our One Book July 2019 Week 1 read-along of the Bullet Journal Method by Ryder Carroll. Now I'm going to start out by telling you that Liam and I have both caught the queen mother of summer colds, so we're gonna hope I don't have to take any Kleenex breaks during this, or pause the camera while I sneeze 35 times in a row so that I can't breathe. So what I decided to do, first of all, my goal is to post each section of the read-along on Saturday or Sunday every week in July. Okay, so this is week 1, and there are 5 parts to the book. The 5th part is fairly short, so I'm going to combine the 4th and 5th parts together for the 4th week read-along video. Okay, so just so you guys kind of have a better idea of what's going on. I wasn't abundantly clear about that in my intro video, because I wasn't sure how I was going to do it yet. I hadn't decided. So that's what I'm going to do. So they should go up on Saturday or Sunday every week. If something goes sideways, it'll be up by Monday. I don't want that to happen. It's not my goal. So let's see if I can even get this one up on time for starters, okay? So it's summer. Everybody here is trying to stop me from getting stuff done. So the other thing I decided to do was to wait to show you my planner until we get into week 2. If you're reading along with me so that you've only read section 1 in here doesn't focus on the notebook itself, right, or your planner itself. It focuses on preparing for it, why you're doing it, mindfulness, intentionality, doing kind of a mind sweep or a brain dump, a mental inventory, I believe he calls it if I remember correctly, before you even jump into that notebook. So as not to muddy the waters, I thought maybe I wait until week 2. I will do that as a separate video, and I'm going to tell all y'all right now, it is not the A6 Stalogy in the pocket file effects that I talked about and showed you in my intro video. I knew I was going to do that. As I was saying it in the video, I knew. I just had a feeling, and I thought, you know what? That's why I threw that caveat in there, that when I do my planner setup for July, it may not be this book, and I reserve the right to do that. I did do something completely different. I thought for One Book July, I want to do something completely different, so I'll show you guys this coming week. So if I can get this up today, then I will try to get the planner setup video posted by, let's say, Wednesday during week 2, okay? And I'm going to do that as a separate video from our read-along, okay? Again, so as not to muddy the waters. So let's talk about section 1 of the Bullet Journal Method. Section 1 is called the preparation, and there's a great little kind of Venn diagram showing the intersection of what and why. Now, there are a lot of concepts in this section that had me doing a lot of this. I kept nodding my head and saying, yep, I agree, because there's a lot in here that there's a lot in here that I already do, but he does such a great job of verbalizing those concepts. So there's a lot of highlighter and a lot of nodding going on in here. He starts off, as you guys have read, with a couple of kind of anecdotes from a couple of different bullet journal users. And one of the first things that really stuck out to me was he was talking about one woman named Sandy, and how as she went along, the mundane kind of daily tasks were part of a bigger picture. That when you have monthly goals and weekly goals, wherever in your planning, whether you bullet journal or not, okay, let me throw that, I should have thrown that out there first. To me personally, I would say the concepts in part 1 apply regardless of how you go about your planning, that if you apply these concepts to it, you will see things getting better, you will see better progress, you'll start to feel better about things, you'll get better at that decision-making process, which he goes into right toward the end of part 1. And that one really stuck out to me because if you're new here, we have a very large family, but if you're not new here, you guys know I've said 1,000 times, we have a very large family. There are a lot of schedules going on, how those things work together and how people get where they need to be when, and whether I need to drive them or not, and whether or not Mike's in town, or, you know, all of that has to work together. And the mundane stuff in life can make me feel like I'm not making any progress. Health issues in my life can make me feel like I'm not making any progress. So seeing those mundane things, or those doctor's appointments, or whatever the case may be, seeing them get done in the context of my planner, where I also have my own personal goals and plans and things, it just helps remind me that yes, those things are my responsibility, but they are part of a bigger picture, and that's super easy to forget, and it's super important to remember. And of course, the bugs are starting. And one thing that this particular woman did was she added 15 minutes to her day, maybe right at the beginning of the day, for just something that was a passion project for her, something that was just hers. It's only 15 minutes, and she said that maybe do that 15-minute thing before you even check your phone in the morning, let's say, before you turn on the computer, before you turn on the TV, before you do anything else. Maybe after you make the coffee, though. That is what I would do first. That time expands in a way when you give yourself, to me, those are small gifts to myself, those stolen moments. We've talked about those stolen moments before. That when I have my planner set up in a system that works for my brain, I can take 15 minutes and jump in really quickly, know exactly what I should be working on, know exactly how much of it I can get done in that 15 minutes, and just work and not have to fiddle about in my planner to figure that out. The other thing he talks about right toward the beginning of section 1 is that having tools and techniques down pat, having kind of adding these things to your life can give you clarity, direction, and focus throughout your day. So while you do have those mundane things you have to get done, I know I tend to get caught up in the minutia of the day and what everybody else needs. I find that having a system helps me have some focus kind of through that stuff. So while those mundane daily things need to be done, I still have focus through the other stuff, and I am better present for my kids or for my husband when I have that focus. And one thing, I love this sentence, he was talking about technology leaking into his life and how it can be very distracting, and having an analog refuge proved invaluable in helping him define and focus on what truly mattered. And he kind of touches on that again at the end of this section too, that having something, a book, a notebook, a planner, whatever you use that is analog and not digital, my planner can't tell me I have an email, my planner can't tell me I have a text, my planner can't ring because I have a phone call. It is solely its own thing, separate from all of those distractions. I loved this sentence also. This one's on page 12. The simple act of pausing to write down the important minutiae of one's life goes far beyond simple organization. It has helped people reconnect with themselves and the things they care about. And that is so true. If you can catch those little, real quick, flitting thoughts that you might have, or little ideas that might just randomly pop in your head. And he talks about this later in the section. Again, he does a great job of kind of tying things together at the end of this first section. If you can catch those thoughts or ideas when you have them while you're in the middle of doing the laundry and helping your kid with homework, and the things that you have to do that are your responsibilities, or if you're at work all day and you're kind of doing your job, but then you also have these other random thoughts or ideas for things at work, if you can capture them, write them down, where all of that is in one place, you're more likely to act on them. They're more firmly cemented in your brain without taking up bandwidth because you've physically written them down. So the next section we're going into is the promise. That starts on page 15. And he again talks about distraction and being productive. And there's another great Venn diagram of productivity and mindfulness, and where they intersect is intentionality. Productivity can be very easily confused with being busy. And I know I've tried to make busy kind of a naughty word in my world because if I am busy, I am not being productive in my own head. You may look at it differently, and that is totally okay. That has helped me not to get bogged down with the busy, with everybody else's stuff. It's helped me make sure that I carve a path through every day for little bits here and there of my own things that are my own goals. And we have family goals. My kids have their own goals, and I want to help them get there. That's my job. But it's important to also have those things there for yourself, the things that matter to you, and not to get, have that get lost. So having this want to be more productive, he talks about getting rid of digital distractions. And in our world, I don't know if totally getting rid of digital entirely, like I do YouTube videos, I have an Instagram account, I text with my parents, my husband travels a lot, we text a lot. I would never want to ditch digital things in my world completely, but I need a place away from them to let my brain stretch in a huge way. I need that. And part of that is not, and now I have a bug in my book, part of that is not writing things down all over the place, not slapping things on Post-its all over the place, but having one place, because he talks about having scraps of paper or an app that might need to be updated. It's compounding efficiency that drains your bandwidth, is the way he puts it, and it is completely avoidable. And I love that sentence. If you're not writing things down all in one place, and I always tell you guys, write it down, right? I've said it, I know you guys have heard me say it 1,000 times, and I've heard many other people say it too. If it's important to you at all, write it down. Even if you're not sure if it's going to end up being important, write it down. Write it down. Get it out of your head. Don't carry it around. Your brain is for thinking, not for storage, right? So having things scattered all over the place in your brain, physically, on Post-it notes, wherever, scraps of paper, he calls that compounding efficiency that drains your bandwidth, but it's completely avoidable. And it's avoidable by putting everything in one place, right? And the next section, he talks about mindfulness, and it's kind of funny. He's like, I'm not trying to get woo-woo, is how he puts it on, you guys. But he talks about mindfulness is the process of waking up to see what's right in front of you. And that's where something like his bullet journal comes into play. And again, we talked about the act of writing something down by hand. And the way he puts it is beautiful. The act of writing by hand draws our mind into the present moment on a neurological level, unlike any other capturing mechanism. Now, I know when I'm writing, like not journaling, not writing in my planner, planning things out, but if I just need to dump things out, or have this dream, I would love to write a fiction book. I would love to write a fiction book. And I have all these ideas, and sometimes I find that letting all those ideas dump out of my head, I'm better off at a keyboard, because my fingers move faster than on a keyboard than they do with pen in my hand. So I'm trying to capture all that stuff and kind of dump it out of my brain, right? But when you're in your planner and when you're really inspecting, am I being intentional? Am I being mindful? Am I being productive? That's where it's a really good place to not be on a keyboard or typing on a phone or on a tablet, but writing by hand, because it makes you slow down a little bit, which is kind of the opposite I want to do when I'm trying to write, because I don't know that I can write fiction. I'm just trying, and I just want to get everything out of my head as fast as possible. That's not always what I want to do in my planner. In my planner, I want to stop, and the way he puts it is it keeps you mindful of why we're doing what we're doing, and that is so important, to make sure we take those pauses and be mindful of why we're doing what we're doing. The next section is called the guide. I don't think I really highlighted a whole bunch in there, only because this was my second read through. So make sure you take a look at that for sure. It talks about if you're just getting started versus if you've bullet journaled for a while, kind of a how to use the book, or suggestions of how to use the book to make it most beneficial for you, depending on where you are in your bullet journaling or planning journey. So the next section starts on page 26. That's the why. And he talks about defining what's meaningful on your own terms, and how Rhomany Ware, and everything is listed in the footnotes in the back, is an Australian nurse and author, and she worked in palliative care for a long time, and noticed that the number one regret was that people wish they'd stayed true to themselves. If we don't take those moments, take that time on a consistent basis to see why we're doing and what we're doing, and why we are doing what we're doing, you can kind of get lost in that minutia of every day, right? And you want to, how he describes kind of intentionality, David Bentley Hart defines it as the fundamental power of the mind to direct itself towards something, a specific object, purpose, or end. And then Ryder Carroll kind of summarized and said, intentionality is the power of the mind to direct itself toward that which it finds meaningful and take action toward that end. And I love the way he puts that, is we are capable of this. You really are. Once you clear away the clutter and the distractions, stop carrying around every idea, every thought, every to-do task in your brain, get it all locked and loaded into one place where you know where it all is. It isn't going to go anywhere. It's fine, it's safe, it's there when you need it. You can clear out that clutter and make room for intentionality. Make room to take action toward those things. And then he talks about the why a little more, and how when you know why you're doing, when you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, you don't just become an automaton. You kind of step out of that. He says you become more innovative, creative, and present. You're not only working harder, but smarter, because everything that you have is pointed toward that goal, right? Your focus, your thinking, your intention, you are striving towards something that is important to you, and that all can come together. And I talked a little bit about this when we did a little bit of talking on the podcast and in prior videos about deep planning, like having your planner set in a way that works for your brain, and knowing what the goals are that are in that planner that you are heading toward can get you into that flow state so much quicker, and so that you are more productive. You are completely focused on what you're doing. You can get a lot more done in a lot less time when all of those things coalesce and come together and you're kind of a laser beam toward that goal. So even if you have to chip away at that goal in little 15-minute increments, those 15-minute increments are laser focused, right? They're super productive 15-minute little bursts if that's all you can get. And a lot of days that's all I can get. So he goes on to talk about, self-awareness, that why, and how having a planner, specifically your bullet journal, it kind of tells the story of your whole life, because you are putting all of those things in one place. You're not scattering them all over. You're kind of able to take a step back at the end of the day during a daily review, day after day, doing a weekly review week after week, and so on and so forth, monthly and quarterly and yearly, and however often you do that. If you create that habit of keeping everything in one place, but then going back and looking at it, you can see what worked, you can see what didn't work, you can see what else may have been going on in your life when maybe you were really working away at those goals, or when something happened that slowed you down from those goals. I know I have a bad habit of kicking myself when I don't get my stuff done. I never make as many videos as I want to make. I never get as many of my ideas out of my brain onto paper and onto a camera or into a blog post as often as I would like to. And I will kick myself and feel like I'm lazy and be down on myself, and none of that is productive. That sucks up valuable bandwidth too. But if I am consistent in my planner and going back and looking at what else was going on, I didn't make a single video for 2 months, let's say. What else was going on? I honestly will forget. Oh my gosh, that was when I, had an adrenal crash, or that was when I got really sick, or that was when, so-and-so had this going on, and I was, one of my kids or whatever. Seeing your whole life all in one place, for me, it helps me maintain perspective, so that I don't spend so much bandwidth kicking myself, because that is such wasted energy. That's energy that is negative and not good for us, right? And we need to push toward those goals. We need to stop that negative influx and find what else was going on outside of, your planner and your goals that may have affected those things, if that makes sense. The next part is called Decluttering Your Mind. This starts on page 34. And I love this. We have 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts per day. For context, if each thought were a word, that means our minds are generating enough content to produce a book every single day. So, and then he talks about how all those thoughts, and those thoughts could be positive things, negative things. You're remembering, you gotta wash the towels, oh, this great idea for this project at work, whatever the case may be. And all of that can just come down on you as being busy. And that was why I said earlier, I try so hard to treat busy as a bad word. I fail at it, I do, but I try. And because we have, again, all of these digital distractions, it can pull from your focus. And he says focus is an investment of your time and energy. Both are limited and therefore exceptionally valuable resources. And again, that talks about having a place that is free from those distractions, and also maybe how you have that place set up to not distract you. I can be pretty good about, if I'm going to sit down and I'm working on a project, let's say, and unless I am waiting for a phone call from my husband or a text from my kids, if I know where everybody is, I will shut the phone off for 20 minutes and just focus here. However, I also have to have my planner set up in a way that isn't distracting, which is why I have a monthly, a weekly, and daily sections. If I am planning my week, I will look at my calendar for the month, move any tasks and appointments onto that weekly, and then during the week, unless I'm scheduling something for an upcoming future week, I tend to not look at my monthly calendar again because I personally find it very distracting. We have a lot of schedules going on here, a lot of moving pieces, as I've said, and sometimes looking at that monthly calendar when I just need to look at a particular week, I can find it overwhelming and distracting depending on the day. So not only getting rid of other distractions, outside distractions, but within your planner itself, having it set up in a way that you don't find distractions stopping you from focusing on what you need to focus can get you into that deep planning mode of thinking a little bit quicker. I'm trying so hard not to sneeze right now, you guys. He talks about the book Willpower by Roy Baumeister, and I may be mispronouncing that. You can't make decision after decision without paying a biological price. It's called decision fatigue, and that can lead to decision avoidance. And I love that how he talks about that leading into a mental inventory, or you could, it's not exactly the same as a brain dump or a mind sweep, but it's in essence, to me at least, kind of the same idea. So you want to, you have all these things you have to do and all these things you want to do, right? You have responsibilities and you have goals. And he talks about decision fatigue as he leads into talking about doing this mental inventory. So the first thing he says you have to do is recover from decision fatigue. Get some distance from those decisions. And how do we get some distance? How do we get things out of our head so we can mentally take a step back from something? We write it down, right? That's the key to everything, is write it down. He says holding on to thoughts is like trying to catch fish with your bare hands, and I couldn't have put it better myself. My brain is like a sieve, a really bad, holy Swiss cheese-like sieve, and I need to write things down so I don't lose them. So I do write things down. People ask, when do you plan? Do you plan in the evening? Do you plan in the morning? I plan all day. I am in my planner all freaking day, pretty much every day, unless we're out for the day doing a family type activity, and 9 times out of 10 my planner is still in the car or in my bag anyway, because I want to catch those ideas. I want to catch those thoughts. I want to catch those little reminders. And it's okay, get it out of your head, because guess what? After it's out of your head, you're not carrying all that around. It's not sucking up all that mental bandwidth, and that relieves you of your decision fatigue, so that then you can sit down with some perspective without all of that bogging your mind down and look through those things you've written down and kind of cull the herd, right? And that's what he talks about, is sitting down, making a mental inventory. The way he has it is 3 columns. You guys have seen it in the book. So you have what you're working on now, what you should be working on, and what you want to be working on. And I'll do this. It's usually about once a month. I will go through all those little notes and scribbles amongst all the tasks and appointments and everything else, and kind of collate them in one place, do a big brain dump on anything else that's floating around in my head at that present moment, put it on there too, and then give them what he calls the test. And the test is, does it matter to you or someone you love, and is it vital? So if it matters, if it's important to you, or if it's important to someone you love, and things that are vital, absolute responsibilities, okay? Those are things that you absolutely have to do. Any item that doesn't pass that test is a distraction. It adds little to no value to your life. Cross it off and be ruthless. And I put a big asterisk by that passage right there. Everything on your list has to fight for its life to stay there. And this was the part that I literally was reading out loud and went, yes! It's because that is how I personally feel that's how ruthless we have to be to kind of intentionally, mindfully produce in our lives to meet those goals, and then have new ones after you achieve those goals. What's the next one then? And I will admit, I do have a safety net for this, okay? When I do a brain dump and I go through and kind of hack and slash and get rid of things, if there's something that I think I might get to down the road, maybe, I do have a section in the back of every notebook, a spread usually, sometimes 2. It would in here be considered a collection, but we haven't gotten to that part yet, so I don't want to jump ahead for anybody who's reading along section by section. But I do have a section in the back where I put those, I believe maybe David Allen called it a someday maybe list. I might have that incorrect. I apologize if I do. But it's kind of my, I don't know if I really want to let this idea or this task go yet, but I know I'm not going to do it right now. I know right now it's not feasible, or it's not likely, or it's not, it doesn't add value to what is currently going on and what currently needs to be done. Does that make sense? So I file it away in the very back of my notebook. That list I go through probably once every 3 months, roughly. Sometimes it's every 2 when I know it's getting real bulky. And then I really do call the herd. If there are things that are sitting on that list, or I haven't even looked at that list in, say, 6 months, everything gets struck off it, period. It just goes, because I don't have room for it in my life. And he says when you're all done, you'll probably be left with 2 types of tasks. Things you need to do, which are your responsibilities, and things you want to do. Those are your goals. So having that list, that mental inventory done, and he does make a comment about, you might be asking, why aren't we doing this in our notebook? And he says, that's a valid point, but when you start your bullet journal, you should do so with only things you believe are important or will add value to your life. So that's like I was just saying with the safety net. Like, I will go through it. If I haven't touched it in months, everything on that list goes. If it's not going to add value, if it's not a responsibility, it's got to go. If it's not a responsibility and it's not a goal. Okay, does that make sense? Next section, we're getting toward the end here. Next section he talks about is notebooks. That starts on page 42. And he talks about how your notebook, like we discussed earlier, it's an analog place. It's free from distractions. And especially, I can't urge you enough, as you learn how your brain works and how your planner is set up best to work with your brain, there are ways to structure your layouts. So, yes, I'm repeating information from my monthly to my weekly to my daily. Yes, I am, absolutely. But if I need to only look at a certain day, I don't want to look at the whole month, because I will immediately get distracted, because there are so many moving pieces here. If I only need to see a certain week and how pieces are going to work with Mike traveling for hockey or whatever, and kids' schedules and driving and whatnot, I sometimes only need to look at that week. And again, if I look at my monthly, a lot of times it's like me looking at a whole yearly calendar at once. It's just too much input and it distracts me, and then I'm not being efficient, right? So he says your notebook gives you a chance to stop and think. It's personal space, free from distraction, and because starting to live like that and creating a habit of living in your notebook, reviewing in your notebook, you start to get to know you better. You start to learn better how your brain works. You start to learn better about your motivations. And then it is easier to make those decisions. It prevents decision fatigue, or at least that's what I've found. Let's see. He says another reason we use a notebook is flexibility, right? It's a blank canvas. You can use it however you want. It is totally up to you, because as I've told you guys before, your planner works for you. You do not work for your planner. There are no rules in your planner. If it is working for you, then it works. And that's all there is to it. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It doesn't have to function like anybody else's. Nobody can tell you you're doing it wrong. And if anybody is telling you that you're doing it wrong, then they're doing it wrong, period. They just are. Their planner should work for them. Your planner should work for you. It should be as unique as the wonderful individual that you are, okay? And I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I can't stress that enough. It is not a competition. Your planner works for you, and as long as it's working for you, it doesn't have to look like, behave like, act like anybody else's, okay? That is so important to me, that we all try to grasp that idea of it's a notebook, it's flexible. And as he puts beautifully, notebooks are beholden to their authors. It works for you. The notebook is beholden to you and you alone, nobody else. He quotes a bullet journalist, Burt Webb, saying, as I do daily, weekly, and monthly reviews, leaping forward and backward in my bullet journal, my brain inevitably makes more links between ideas that I was not able to do when using my various separate digital tools. And I love that. We talked about that also in the deep planning things that I had posted previously, that being able to make those connections between disparate thoughts and disparate ideas, that's creativity. That's the definition of creativity, is being able to combine things that maybe haven't been combined before. Oh, my battery's gonna die. He says your notebook lets you start fresh each day. Your notebook evolves as you do. I'm literally trying to beat the battery here, you guys. And then the last section is about handwriting, writing by hand, the act of writing by hand. and we've talked about this many, many times, writing by hand activates the reticular activating system in your brain, which kicks off a whole bunch of other processes in your brain. You are forced to be more economical and strategic with our use of language, crafting notes in your own words. I love how he puts that we have to listen more closely, think about the information, and essentially distill others' words and thoughts through our own neurological filtration system and onto the page. I love that he puts it like that, because yes, people will absolutely make the argument that, well, I can type faster. If I'm on a keyboard taking notes in a class, let's say, I can type faster than I can write by hand. But because it takes you longer to write things out by hand, it gives handwriting a cognitive edge, is how Ryder Carroll puts it, and I absolutely love that. It keeps our minds sharper for longer. And this was just, again, another yes moment. True efficiency is not about speed, it's about spending more time with what truly matters. So the physical act of writing things down in the notebook that we're going to set up in section 2 here kind of wraps everything up. So I'm trying to beat the battery here. I hope you guys found any of this helpful. I would love to hear what you thought of section 1 in the comments down below. And coming up here in a couple days, I will show you how I have my planner set up. And then next Saturday or Sunday, we will talk about section 2 of the Bullet Journal Method by Ryder Carroll. Thank you all so much. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.